All right, welcome to session to our future world-class producers. In this session, we'll closely examine production as a discipline and what producers do, aiming to have the confidence about production as a field and try to put insights into this future evolution. While this talk is mostly geared towards producers, I do want to emphasize the knowledge shared will be helpful for anyone, especially those outside production discipline, to understand the challenge producers facing and how to collaborate effectively with them and the team. Before we dive into content, let me do a quick intro. My name is John, currently the Director of Operations at Twin Alice. I've been around for a while, and my first job was actually helping a team, one of the largest at Hulu, on board to Scrum. And since then, I've joined the game industry from EA to Data Active. I was constantly learning new things, going back and forth between UGC gaming and traditional gaming, dabbling between production and product. Most recently, I was in charge of delivering champions for League of Legends Wild Rift. For people who are curious about this gentleman to the right, this is actually a guy called Claude Shannon who helped me a lot get into where I am today. He's also the inventor of information science, and I hope my talk will be also useful to you in some capacity. Let's take a look at our agenda. We have a couple of things to cover. The topic first is to cover what is production. So we're going to dive into the roles of production and producer responsibilities. The second is to look at the evolutions of production structures, go back in history and look at how those evolve and maybe look at other discipline as well. The third part is look forward to what the future might entails and what a promising statement that we can say confidently right now. So part one, what is production exactly? I have a very simple definition. Producers are people who are responsible for delivering the game to the players on time, on budget, at quality. It sounds a hell of ambiguous, and it is because you have an image of the producer who just acts as the agent between the leadership and the team that harass everyone but not doing anything. And this might be true because a good producer needs to leverage both his or her hard skills and soft skills at the same time. So it's essentially a craft that involves, developing set process and frameworks while skillfully leading and organizing self-sufficient teams. And to illustrate better, let's put all the things that producer might be doing, in this journey of a lifespan of a project. When person first on board, he will set the vision for the product. So that means set the goal, align with the stakeholders. Next, he will be choosing the right production framework. This is where the person needs to come in and really evaluate the deadlines, requirements, team's resource, and a bunch of other metrics before you arrive one. And next up, you have creating the process for a team. So you need to first by assessing the team temperature, what their understanding of the different process, and what are essentially you'll be doing for the daily stand-up, right? What goes into your business review and so on. This is also built upon your understanding of the craft, plus how much can be bought in by your team. To the right, you have that a cluster, intertwined problems, which I characterize as learn and adapt to save the projects. Some team, depend on maturity, might not have this issue as communication issues, hierarchy issues, or tough war, or conflicts, etc. Some team, may have a lot of those, so you really have to go into root cause and go back and forth to sort things out. Last but not least, we have all those unexpected risks, right? And towards the end of the production pipeline, come from maybe a publisher with sudden requests or just a feature creep. And hopefully by going through all those things, we can go to the promised land of launching the product to the players. This is an oversimplified versions of the production journey, but I hope that provides some guidance on what we know as the responsibility of the producer. So let's go revisit, the statement we said just earlier, that producers are people responsible for delivering the game to the players. But from what it sounds like, they're not doing any actual work. This actually keeps me awake at night because my girlfriend would often say like my job is useless overhead. And it's hard to argue, to be honest, because it makes you question what puts you in that credit session. And the feeling is not uncommon because no one likes the feeling that the project is controlled by a backseat driver. Then you really start questioning like what you have done. So unlike artists who make unrealistically, believing environment for the players, game design make fun, engaging levels for the audience. We as producers don't do any actual work. And after a while, I realized that while producers may not directly create game assets or write game codes, our role are critical in orchestrating the whole development process. We make sure that projects, meet the standard, budget, and the timelines. Another thing that makes, the producer's work less obvious and straightforward is that, all the works that you put into the game and the cycle of the production will be thrown away. But ironically, batch processes are created that way because there's no one size fits all solution for any team. What was for you for like a small indie size project should not be the solution for like a AAA studio. And even on the same team, what went well when you have like only 3 people during the pre-production should not be affecting your decision process when you approach the same question when you have like 40 people projects to launch. And it seems like the complexity producers are dealing with largely come from 2 sub things. The first one is the soft skills, right? So leading a team, dealing with the conflicts and motivate the team to go forward. And the next part is multiplied by the plannings, process setup, and deciding the production model. Look, I have the definition very clear because I believe that hard skill can be acquired, can be learned. Soft skills more like in dealing with the people and the irrational nature. So we kind of cover that in some degree. I personally believe that sharpening your hard skills can be relatively easy, but soft skill is somewhat differentiate the great from the good because you're dealing with irrational human nature, which makes the buying process, right? Anytime you need to persuade people unpredictable. And if you want to implement the right things, you also need to constantly monitor and the timing, which is another layer of difficulty. For example, I really want to implement the business review session studio-wide, but none of the team were ready for it. Why? Because the goals were never aligned. We don't have like any planning sessions, so people didn't know like what the objectives are, and consequently, team don't have enough motivation to track the metrics. So even though like everyone know it is super important to implement those sessions, it took us a long time to rightfully track and implement, those things for the teams. Again, the best process is the one that can, feast the best with your own game development cycle, and you have to constantly like reevaluate. And it sounds hard, it sounds like a shortboard, to me, and even like. So unlike artists, engineers who have to push the boundary to unlock like new gameplay and new system mechanic, producers are essentially dealing with, this unique problem, the people, which implies that, it's need a framework or at least a structured way to think about this. So, that essentially, we cover all the responsibilities of producers, what he or she is doing, and now we need to go back in history and find out the evolutions of different framework and what we can learn from that. Okay, so everyone should know, who this guy is. Steve Jobs once famously said, "Simple can be harder than complex." Indeed, the reality is that crafting a structure is demanding. I believe that he must have spent tons of his time sharpening his skill to be a great storyteller, and that requires a world-class framework. So through the decades, game developers have flourished and refined production structure to try to contain complex questions into manageable ones. This process have shown that a well-defined, straightforward framework can greatly facilitate game development. If you nail this aspect, you can afford to make many mistakes elsewhere without severe consequence. The goal is to minimize our cognitive load, freeing up our focus for other important areas. And I think then it'd be very important to look at how other areas do it. Take narrative example. This is a very classic three-act structure, very popular in Hollywood, but also very fundamental in game storytelling. Games employ this narrative art beginning with the setup where the game would introduce the challenge and the world, escalating through the confrontation where tension and story complexity build, and accumulating in a resolution where conflicts are resolved and the narrative reaches climax. This structure not only propels the narrative forward, but also keeps players engaged and invested in the storyline. Let's take the game The Last of Us example. The first act, right? Players are introduced to the protagonist, Joe and Ellie, in the post-apocalyptic world where they live, settling the stage with emotional stake and the initial challenges, which is to survive. The second act, deepen those elements where they embark the journey, traveling across the states, seeing various survivors, their encounter with like Bill, Henry, and Sam, and finally taking the charge to go through the winter. Those events, deepen the emotional connection between the protagonist and raise the stakes, focusing on their journey and the evolving relationship between the characters, amid escalating threats. The final act, bring the resolution where the journey reached the peak. Joe and Ellie, reach the Firefly's hospital in Solid City, where her fate as a cure for the whole infection will be decided. That leaves a big question mark to the audience, and where Joe lies about the nature of the escape. This try and true structure enhance the gaming experience by providing a very clear narrative path and emotion depths. While variation exists, deviation from this framework often result in narrative that fail to engage the audience, much like poorly received films that struggle to keep the viewers awake. Leave narrative aside, game design is not an exception. Game design also has a framework by Stone. So Stone has this framework where he, outlined that all games have those elements from start, go, decisions, obstacles, interactions among players, and the rules. It helps us really have a very clean understanding of what a game is for the players and the developers alike. Take volleyball example, right? Volleyball, everyone knows that have a set of rules. You have to score and to beat your opponent. The interaction happens within teams and between opposing teams when you hit the ball back and forth. And last but not least, you have to make a bunch of decisions, pass, set, or spike to score. So in summary, volleyball is a very well-established game that fits the structure set by Stone. Pretty straightforward, huh? So I'm literally stretching my head right now, but what about structure of game production? Does it offer a framework that we can adopt? Recognizing the need for a straightforward and robust structure in our future game production is essential. So to our future world-class producer to innovate, we must dive into the history of game development world to examine different frameworks of production as the complexity increased. Right, that's the question. Much to the surprise, right? There was a time before the adoptions of structured methodologies like waterfall, where the process was just markedly unstructured. This era was characterized by a lack of a clear direction from leadership and the ever-changing array of multifaceted problems like talents, alignment, and other issues. As a result, many games projects were told by chaos and inefficiency, leading to disastrous outcome. This was a very common fate of numerous projects at that time. During the same period, development team will often operate in a reactive mode, scrambling to address issues as they arose without a structured plan. This approach not only hindered by the quality and progress of the game, but also demoralized the development team. It underscored the critical needs of a structured approach to manage large-scale projects. Trust me, I've done personally many projects like this in the past, and all the failed ones were pretty much categorized by similar flavor. And let's take the cancer project Doom 4 example. From the leaked source and online articles, we learned that development team was struggling with a clear direction. There was considerable indecision whether the team should follow its traditional route with an emphasis on shotguns and demons, or evolve into the Call of Doom with a stronger focus on narrative. As the project progressed, the team significantly underestimated the technical complexity of such ambiguous and ambitious projects, resulting in repeated cycles of re-estimations and re-evaluation. And furthermore, you have a team members start to leave. So in short, the Doom 4 had no aligned game direction, have no design of the technical implications, and have no stable team. So it is officially chaos certified. Coming up, we have a framework of a waterfall structure. So probably one of the most famous, waterfall was initially conceptualized by Winston Royce. It's a structured phase approach traditionally used in software and game development. It emphasized sequence progress through clearly defined stages. This method also offer a high degree of stability and predictability, making it particularly suitable for projects where clear path and stable requirements are essential. So in game development, waterfall can be used categorized as ideations, pre-production, production, polishing, and testing. And oftentimes, if you see any projects have very fixed process, that will also go into this category. I still believe that to this day, waterfall is one of the most used production structure because it's so easy to get hands-on and very easy to implement. And while the waterfall model is often seen as traditional and somewhat rigid, it remains widely used across the discipline and the industry. One thing I want to touch on is that what it has done to advance the production framework is that it has a very clear review process for each phase, and B, it has now requires planning upfront for the project, and C, each phase has a clear definitions of what means to pass. What is still missing? It's very hard to revisit complete stages. Testing is often delayed, and if you misunderstood the initial requirements, catastrophic results might happen. Take Zelda, the on the Nintendo 64 as an example. The concept is to make a first-person 3D Zelda game. Pre-production, we have the gameplay, design dot, engineering spike. Production, we have the game engine being done, wrote the mechanics, and craft the world. Testing was planned and completed. Maintenance was done by the team to reiterate some of the features post-launch. So in short, this original Zelda game was waterfall certified. Coming up, after a while, people were thinking about the issues, thinking about the waterfall and the chaos, and finally have a new model that tried to address the question. So Scrum was first introduced by Jeff Sunderland in the early 90s. Scrum emphasizes short development cycles known as sprints, enable teams to quickly deliver functional game content. While we won't be dive into the nitty-gritties of Scrum, it's important to know how it has transferred game development cycle by addressing its development nature. Scrum also adapt our over production structure to account for aspects of human behavior, such as the need to prioritize tasks and limit work in progress to manage cognitive workload. It also recognized the value of establishing short feedback loop and encourage continuous learning. So, compared to the waterfall, it has an element to collectively understand the importance of feedback loop and also respect team collaboration. What is missing though is that it doesn't provide a formula to build collaborative teams, doesn't tell you how to do it, and doesn't tell you how to scale. Last but not least, it wasn't very suitable for applying Scrum onto all the phases of a project. So let's take the Clash of Clans example. The team had autonomy to make game-related decisions. The design was developing short, iterative cycles. The feedback loop was there. I think the Supercell also heavily relies on feedback cycles from the players. And it does have an element of continuous improvements, like retros and different rituals there. Maintenance was to have really high momentum into live ops. So in conclusion, Clash of Clans is Scrum certified. And while we have covered a bunch of different structure for game production, there are also other frameworks out there trying to address the shortcoming of each production structure, like Lean, Kanban, Hybrid, and etc. So in conclusion, we have covered a lot, and we understand that the responsibility of the game producers have encompass of hard skills and soft skills, but none of those frameworks is addressing the soft skills. So we are definitely missing out on what the structure can enable us to better work. So what's the solution? We are looking forward up the horizon and look at the future. Our explorations of production models have gradually revealed that an effective production structure should encompass different aspects. We've seen a shift towards simplifying complex systems, and through my research, I've come to believe that the future, as many people anticipate, involves adopting a framework that integrates the best practice of those long-established hard skills of planning and prioritization with insights to decipher team dynamics. I propose a model that merges those operational techniques with what I call emotional intelligence, a structure that enhances our ability to make well-informed decisions, building on what was previously known as communication or soft skills. And I want to introduce a framework to people. This is Belbin's 19 role, a behavioral test that was initially used to assess a team member's second nature. I think people have underestimated its potential when integrating with our team or in general production structure, because it offers a cure to put the lost puzzle together. When you understand what is that team member's role, you have fundamentally more resources in your arsenal when triaging issues that would otherwise require experience or relying on someone else. So in short, the development team role have give you different teams' motivations and what they're good at. For example, you have the team worker who help the team identify and complete work on behalf of the team. You have coordinator who focus on the team objective, draw out the team members and delegate work appropriately. Plant is a highly creative person. Monitor provides logical eye to weigh team's options, and specialists bring in-depth knowledge to the team. Those are, in addition to the functional roles people have, and really help us understand what we can do out there. So what I've completed by far is by no means, completely work, but offers at least a possibility for us to decipher the irrational nature of human beings. And hopefully all the people out there can understand more about production as a discipline, and what we're trying to accomplish. I think people will be very happy when they find out that the secret sauce of like a self-organizing team may be the combination of like a very strong production structure, like planning, prioritizations, all those old school stuff, plus a deep understanding of your team member's role. So an artist can be a shaper, a game producer can be a team worker, and a QA tester might be the completer or the finisher. And you need those different team composition to survive, as we decipher more of the roles of the development's team roles. So an example I've been really started using is that, in the sprint planning, go to the implementer, as they will probably turn your plans into actions. When you doing your brainstorming sessions, when you find the fun, always involve the plan because they have the best ideas. When you try to resolve like team conflicts, find team workers, try to improve that team atmosphere. Those is just like very simple examples I've done, but I think like there's a lot more that we have to do to understand the question over time. So we've finally come this far, and I want to talk more about the summary of what we covered. We've learned that, what is production as a craft of hard skills and soft skills. We've learned that the evolutions of like production structures, we learned that none of the production structure really provides solution to integrate soft skills, which is an important part of the producer work, into the whole scheme. And the third thing is that despite all those efforts, there's hope. We can do a lot more detailed analysis to incorporate team's role or just people's second nature into production to really decipher that soft skill part of the questions. And that will be all for things I want to cover today. Thanks for coming. I've also provide my contact information here if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or write me email for any feedback. I thank you for coming, and I'll see you next time.